Good afternoon, Ladybugs and Yellow Jackets. Hello, welcome to this Friday's episode of Author Reads here on Fae Productions. I am your host, Fairy Princess Lully. And before I jump into the show today, I just would like to please ask everybody out there watching, hit that like and subscribe button and ring the bell for us if you want to get notifications of future shows. We do about 3 shows a week here, and you don't want to miss any of them because they are awesome and fun, and they're all quite different. So today's show is also, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors, sponsored by Pixie Dance Hoops, who is a local vendor, actually local to me. And I want to give an extra shout out because she also was a vendor that donated prizes to our Cyber Selling gift baskets for the costume contest winners. So thank you so much for doing that. She donated a pair of Pixie earwings, which incidentally is one of the things that she makes, as well as dance ribbons and hula hoops, which are all custom designed. So it's not just your regular, I actually have 2 of her hula hoops there. One of them is a fuzzy hula hoop, it's great. And the other one is a big giant hula hoop. She makes these really great, just bright, sparkly things. And if you want one that is even your own, in your own colors or design, she can make these custom hula hoops. She's an environmentally conscious small shop, and you can often find her around events here in the Northwest, but she also has an Etsy store and an Instagram, and that information is going right below in the ticker. Her work is inspired by nature, fairies, birds, bugs, and mythical creatures. I can attest to all of that because I have seen her beautiful shop, and she is out there in the woods surrounded by all of that inspiration every day. So color me a little bit jelly. But she uses as many upcycled materials as she can. Shannon, that is her name. We don't ever call her that, though. We call her Pixie Hoops. That's our household nickname for her. So please, if you are looking for something to do, and it's a great way to have some kind of moving activity while you're stuck inside with COVID, et cetera, because you don't have to just hoop your hoop. So there are many hula hoop exercises that you can get into to help keep yourself in shape while you're stuck inside. So check her out. All of her information is also in the low bar as well as the ticker, you guys. Thank you so much for supporting our channel and all of the things that we do here, Pixie Dance Hoops. And with that, we are jumping in to the show today. Please welcome Jay Hartlove, who is our guest author today. Hello, Jay.
Hello, how are you?
I am doing quite well, actually, all things considered. So, I'm feeling almost better. So last week was probably about 80%, and now we're about at 95%. So happy to be here and kind of back into the regular routine. How about yourself? How are you doing over there, wherever you are? I don't actually know.
I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area, and we're doing just fine. We are finally getting chilly fall weather, and we're loving it.
So define fall weather in San Francisco. I mean, it's November. What does that mean?
Well, it's raining, and it's in the 50s and 60s. We had a heat wave just 2 weeks ago, which was very strange for late October. Halloween was warm, but we're actually feeling like fall. The trees are changing. The wind's blowing. The rain's coming down. It feels like fall. It's good. I have friends in Pennsylvania and the East Coast, of course, that were buried under snow already. So
exactly, that's what I'm asking. I'm like, well, you're in California, so what does that mean exactly? I see now 50 to 60 degrees. Yeah, up here it's getting pretty chilly at night. So we are definitely down in the low 40s and upper 30s where we are here in the Seattle area. So,
right.
Ooh. Yes. So please, if you will, tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is that you write.
Right. Well, I'm normally a thriller writer. I have a series of thriller novels out. It's the Goddess Rising trilogy. Very scary stuff. Lots of angels and dreams and gods fighting in the streets. And this book that I want to talk about today, though, is sort of a change of pace for me. It's something that I've been wanting to do for a long time, and I finally got around to doing it. It's sort of an interesting story. We can talk later in the Q&A about how this story actually came to be. But it's
Okay.
it's a fantasy romance called Mermaid Steel. And it plays into the mythology of mermaids a little bit. It also has a lot to say about social justice issues. It's a book about racial prejudice, actually. And so my mermaids are both playing the mythical role of mermaid as well as playing the role of the oppressed people who don't have any way out to better their situation in the story. So it's sort of a lot to bite off. Like I said, I wanted to do this story for a long time. The book was actually scheduled to come out the beginning of this year, but of course, earlier this year, a lot of things happened.
Yes.
And I realized that I am this old white guy, and it is not my turn at the microphone. So we actually delayed the release of the book by 4 or 5 months to let other people who should have the microphone have the microphone. I didn't want to, interfere with the right people having the public eye.
That's very
so we waited, but the story still has a lot to say, and people who are reading the book now are very impressed that something that starts off looking like this fluffy fantasy romance actually has a lot to say about social injustice.
Now, is this a standalone book, or is it the first at the beginning of a series?
It is a standalone book, but there's a lot of world building, and there's plenty of room for sequels. If people really take to it and they want a sequel, there can always be sequels. But this is a complete story. It wraps up at the end, yes.
All right. Well, that sounds pretty cool, and I think it's quite thoughtful of you to, to be conscious on a social, social awareness level like that. So, if I may now, what has your interest? What is it that has captured your interest with mermaids in particular? Why have you chosen this, or did we want to save that off?
No, actually, I've always been a huge fan of things having to do with the sea and mermaids. I have lots of sea motif things in my house. This shirt that I'm wearing has I don't know if you can see it, but they actually have mermaid dingbats embroidered on the shirt all over in a pattern. It's I'm kind of nuts about fish stuff. I've got I can show you this mug that I've got of this fish. He's he keeps me company keeps me company on my desk here. Yeah, I've always been fascinated with the sea. There's something about just spending time at the beach listening to the surf is just magical to me. And I've done a lot of diving myself. There's actually a mermaid community out there that I'm hoping to reach with this book. They're professional acrobats. They free dive to 50 feet. They stay underwater for 4 or 5 minutes, and it's amazing. And they wear the fins and the tails. They perform a lot of water.
Anybody says the mermaids and the fae are real things that are out there. I have mermaid friends.
Yeah, this is a mixture of cosplay with athletics. It's amazing. They perform at water parks. They perform at parties. They are a lot of them are very involved in save the ocean movements and environmental causes. Because they're mermaids, right?
Yes, indeed. So
pretty exciting.
It makes me think now when we're done with the show, I'll have to go share a link to the Seattle Merpod group because, I like I said, well, all of us fantastical creatures, right? We kind of have a small little network, right? So
absolutely. I really wanted to go to the convention that they have every summer in Sacramento, but of course it was canceled this year because of COVID. Right. But I'm definitely going to go next year if they're open. So it's
that sounds really fun. So and a good place also to. Excuse me, I'm adjusting my sitting here. Sorry about that. So, Well, so today the book you're going to read to us from is called Mermaid Steel, yes?
Yes.
Okay, and can you just give us a quick summary of the setting of the thing that we're about to listen to?
Yes, absolutely. There's two villages. One of them is offshore, occupied by the mermaids, and one of them is onshore. It's a fishing village. And they have been intense relations. They've got treaties to try to stay out of each other's way. And things have really broken down. And into that environment, a mermaid weaver named Chiel and the human blacksmith named Sten meet and fall in love and realize that they have a lot of cultural differences to overcome. And then they have to deal with this systemic prejudice that's built into the two villages not getting along. And so they've got a lot of work to do. And it's, they have this grand adventure and they end up learning from each other. They have two very different cultures. The mermaids tend to believe in letting things go and being patient, letting the ocean provide for them because everything belongs to the ocean. They don't believe in personal property, things like that. Whereas the humans are all about asserting themselves and taking command and seizing the moment. And Sten tries to force himself into the situation to fix things because that's what a human does, right? And he just makes it worse, right? Just like when white people try to help black people with their causes, we usually just make things worse, right? You can't force yourself into these situations, right? And so by the end of the story, though, he learns patience and she learns assertiveness, and they learn from each other's culture, and that's actually how they solve the problem. So I had a lot of fun pulling a lot of thematic things together. I could not have written this book if this was the first book I wrote. This is the fourth book I've had published. It's probably the sixth book that I've written. But it was a lot of fun to be able to pull all those thematic threads together. And it's not that long. It's like 72,000 words. It's like a 6-hour read. But it packs a lot in there. So.
Well, and so, oh, sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. I was just going to say, I'll show you when we do the reading.
Okay. And so one more quick question, and then we'll get to that part. You were saying right at the beginning that we decided not to publish this. And when you say we, who is the we in there? Is there somebody you need to be giving a shout out to?
Yes. My publisher is Water Dragon Publishing. It is a sister company of the company that published my urban fantasy trilogy, which is Paper Angel Press.
Okay.
They're out of San Jose. They're a classic small press. Yes, Water Dragon Publishing. Thank you very much. Yes, there it is. Thank you. Yes. I love that crawl. It's great. And they are, let's see, Paper Angel has now been in business for 3 years. They've got dozens of books that they've published, and Water Dragon is just like a year old now. They've split off. Basically, it's an imprint to handle the more fantasy-related works, because the stuff that Paper Angel is doing is just getting more and more adult, more and more horror in theme. So we wanted to, give the audiences an easy choice. But no, they're great to work with. I love working for small presses. I've worked with small presses my whole life. There's so much more flexibility and creative control, and yet you still have somebody doing all that work for you so that you can focus on writing. Right. I know a lot of people who do it all themselves, and my hat's off to them. It's an awful lot of work though to typeset and publish and publicize, and it's just dealing with all the different formats. It's crazy to try to do it yourself, but more power to those who can. But I have help.
I'm sure that's okay. So it is a crazy amount of work. So, okay, well, with that, I just would like to say to everybody out there in the audience, I'm about to turn over the camera here to Jay to do the reading. During this time, I will be on mute. I will be in the comments, ready to talk to you guys. And if you have questions, comments, if you like what you hear, leave us a comment. If you have questions that you want to ask Jay, put those into the comment section, and then when he's done reading, then we will have the Q&A, and we'll ask your questions and see where we go from there. And then, of course, at the end of the show, we'll have our book giveaway. So with that, I am going to turn the screen over to you and put myself on mute, good sir.
Okay, great. Well, I'm going to read a longer section. I'm going to read the beginning of the book, most of the first chapter, to give you some flavor for how the world sets up. And then we can do a little Q&A, and then I have another smaller section that I'm hoping to read to you before the end of the hour to give you a little more flavor about the characters. So I'm going to go ahead and start with page 1. Let's just start right here. Sten Holdsmith did not see it coming. He braced his sandal against the sailboat's wood footrail and grabbed the rope net with his strong hands, focused on unraveling the tangled mess. He had thrown out the net, but it hadn't spread in the water. He hauled it up for another try, only to now find it tangled and heavy. His pleasant little excursion was rapidly turning into a lot of work. The sea was thankfully calm, with a clear midday sky, warm sun, and only a light breeze. It could rain later. It always rained in the afternoon. He could stay out as long as he wanted to. He was just waiting for this to become the fun time he had hoped for. Half a dozen seagulls circled patiently overhead. He smirked. Sorry, boys, nothing yet. He mopped his tan brow and 3-day beard with his loose white sleeve and returned to the nets. He barely heard the wind snap the sail full. Not being an experienced sailor, he didn't connect that the snap meant that the sail had come untied and was coming his way. He caught the movement out of the corner of his eye just in time to twist his head out of the yardarm's path, but it still caught him square in the chest, toppling him over backward. He flailed to grab any handhold, but only got the net, which was wrapped around his feet. Oh, for Outland's sake, he blurted out as he fell, followed by the net sliding over the rail. As heavy as it was on deck, it felt much heavier in the water, and it was on top of him, pushing him under. He needed to keep calm and focus on freeing his feet. He couldn't get any stroke to the surface with his feet bound. His lungs were not as full as he needed, having been struck by the sail. He wriggled and pulled in directions that seemed logical, but felt no loosening. He started pulling with his hands, but couldn't find a rope that didn't tighten the mass. Calm didn't stand a chance, as fear and anger fought to take him over. One rational thought formed. What had possessed him to think he could go fishing with no experience and no teacher? So what if he lived in a fishing village? He was a blacksmith and should be in his shop wielding a hammer, not dying, caught like a fish. Not a helpful thought. Maybe if he let the net roll over and fall below him, maybe he could see an opening. He pushed the rope mast with one hand and tried to row himself in the opposite direction with his other arm. Movement! Encouraged, he pushed harder. Once on top of the bulk of the net, though, he saw how far he had sunk below the surface. His chest felt like it would burst. His courage dissolved in the warm water. A flash of silver streaking by caught his eye, and his heart skipped a beat. Great. Now he would be eaten. Maybe he could use the net to defend himself from the shark. He twisted and searched, but couldn't see past his tangled prison. Something tugged on the net hard. He braced himself for the sensation of teeth-ripping flesh, but it didn't come. Another powerful tug, and he felt one leg come free. He squirmed around to see what was happening and came face to face with a mermaid. She smiled at him with her overbroad mouth flashing an array of full, sharp teeth. She had a carved mother-of-pearl knife in her hand. She was cutting him free. He smiled back in utter relief. One more tug and his other leg slipped loose. As happy as he was to be free, he looked up and was not sure he could make it to the surface. She must have seen the desperation in his face, because she did something completely unheard of for merfolk. She seized him under the armpits and flicked her tail in fast, tight strokes. The water rushing past his face was so forceful, it roared in his ears. He marveled at how her muscular tail shot them through the water. He clearly outweighed her, yet she dragged him like a toy. She swam so fast, it reached the surface and arched up into the air. All he could think about was that first delicious breath. When they splashed down, she kept a hold of him. He was exhausted and shaking and glad for her steady grip, despite the social taboo. He was so relieved and so grateful he had to let her know. He reached up and squeezed her webbed hand on his shoulder. When he had caught his breath, he looked at her earnestly. "Thank you." "You're welcome," she said with an understanding nod. He had never seen a mermaid this close before. Her gills, which had been expanded in flowery petals under water, now lay closed and smooth on the sides of her hairless head and neck. She looked quite a bit more human this way, like a teenaged girl with short, curly, albeit oddly silver-colored hair. With her full lips closed, he almost forgot about all those pointed carnivore teeth behind. What really caught him were her eyes. Maybe it was the shine of her silvery skin, light, almost white in her face, fading to dark gray around the back. But the deep aqua color of those eyes that seemed just a little too big for her head, something about that color just wouldn't let him go. He caught himself staring and looked away. "Are you all right?" "Oh, I'll be fine, now that you've saved my stupid hide." She turned and looked at his boat. "I assume you didn't throw yourself overboard in a fishing net on purpose." "Not on purpose." Can you make it back to your boat?" "I think I can manage." And without another word or gesture, she disappeared back under the surface. He looked around and waited, but she was gone. Merfolk had a reputation for not being socialized. He shrugged and swam to his boat. Once back on board, he took the sails down to stop the boat from being blown around randomly. He shook his linen clothes so they would dry hanging loose on his body. He was deciding his next move when the mermaid popped up alongside, holding his net. "I thought you might need this." He reached over the rail and took the end she handed up to him. "Thank you again. I would need it more if I knew what I was doing with it." She gave him a curious look. "Were you trying to teach yourself to fish?" "I thought I should know, coming from a fishing village. I borrowed the boat because I wanted to see for myself." "Well, I cut up the net pretty badly getting you out. It would have to be mended before you can use it again. I'm sure I'll have no trouble finding someone who can fix it, for a price." "I would be happy to mend it for you." "No, you don't have to do that. Please let me repair the damage I made. I have some talent with weaving rope." He regarded her, bobbing in the water with her earnest expression. "If I let you fix the net, you will have to let me pay you back somehow. Some metal fixtures or something." "Metal is always a welcome gift." Then she frowned. "I do not understand what you mean by pay me back. I just want to do what's right." "I appreciate that, but I should pay you for your work." Her frown became almost comical as she twisted her lips to the side and rolled her large glassy eyes, trying to comprehend what he was saying. "I will accept whatever gift you want to give me as thanks for doing this favor. Is that what you mean?" He blinked and rubbed his short, rough beard with his hand as he thought over her offer. "Yes, that works for me." She waved her hand in a shooing motion. "Then please step back from the edge." He did, and she dove beneath the surface. A second later, she flew up out of the water, twisted around, and landed smoothly on her bottom with her tail hanging over the edge. His strength and agility again surprised him. She pulled her thin, rainbow-colored shell knife out of a belt that she wore over one shoulder and went to work on the net straight away. Now that he could see all of her, he realized she was clothed in a light blue woven tunic that clung to her shape, covering her down to what would have been her hips, with a slit down the back for her dorsal fin. He caught himself staring at her long, bare, dolphin-like tail, the fluke of which she flipped in the air with what he guessed was boredom. As she dried off in the sun, he realized her skin wasn't silver, but shades of gray and white, all down her front and almost black down her back. She was really quite beautiful. He surprised himself with that thought. However fascinating she was to look at, what she was doing was just as amazing. He knelt down next to her for a closer look. She glanced up and smiled at him. "You look like you've never seen anyone mend rope." "I guess I've never watched it done." She unraveled a length from both ends of a cut piece, then twisted sets of pairs together, holding each pair as she twisted the next. Once she had 4 pairs, she twisted the pairs together in the opposite direction to form a heeled rope. What made this bit of workmanship all the more magical was watching her do it with her long, thin fingers that were webbed together up to the last joint. "You're really good at this." She lowered her head modestly and said, "This is what I do in my village. I'm a weaver." "And you made this, shirt you're wearing, too?" She smiled. "Yes, my Erda." "Doesn't the fabric slow you down in the water?" "Oh, not this fabric. We weave it so all the fibers run long ways and don't hold onto the water." She pinched the cords. "You see, it's almost dry already. Unlike yours," she added, indicating his white shirt, which still clung to his broad chest, showing the ample hair underneath. He stood up and stepped to the back of the boat. "Well, I'm going to get you an appropriate thank you gift. I'm going to need to get you an appropriate thank you gift. I'm going to need to sail back to my shop. Will that be all right with you, going back to the human village with me?" He started pulling up the sails. "I should be done with this before we get there. I can always hop in and swim alongside to stay out of sight." "Oh, I don't care if anyone sees you on the boat." "Well, I wouldn't want to get you in any trouble," she said. "Oh, don't worry about me. The villagers all think I'm crazy anyway. I just don't want anyone giving you a hard time." He finished tying off the sail lines. "We'll see if there's anyone around. My shop is out on its own pier, so we may not run into anyone anyway." "Your shop? What do you make?" "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't say. I'm a blacksmith. You probably figured out I'm not a fisherman." He tied down the rudder, stepped up to her, and held out his hand. "My name is Sten Holdsmith." She shook his hand. "I am Jiao Mara." She pronounced her first name in a piercing high pitch and her second in a low, deep breath. It was not like anything he had ever heard before. "Chiel," he attempted. "Very close," she nodded. "Certainly good enough, given how different our throats are. How lucky for me to have rescued a blacksmith. I don't have to tell you how important your craft is to us. Important enough to have given your race a bad name from thefts. I've never understood why we can't sell you the metal you need, or exchange gifts, or whatever you want to call it. Our folk shouldn't be reduced to stealing. It destroys any chance of our peoples ever patching things up." "Marrow." "Pardon?" "We call ourselves Marrow, not merfolk." "Really? I'd never heard that. I wonder why not." He returned to steering the boat. "You are a trusting person, Sten Holdsmith, to take a Marrow to a blacksmith shop." Caught off guard, he remembered Atlan's scripture. "Always know how lucky you are, and always be ready to help the needy." How many times had that motto gotten him in trouble? "Oh, I don't think your people are thieves. In fact, I would say most humans don't believe that. I tried to sell hardware to the Marrow, but human law forbids direct commerce. Marrow law forbids it too. It is an ancient law that must be respected." "Well, I don't mean any disrespect, but it doesn't make any sense. It leaves your people at a disadvantage. The only disadvantage my people feel is not being able to make steel ourselves. It can't be done underwater. We are left with your cast-offs." "Well, that's the problem. Even if it's stuff nobody wants anymore, they still see it as stealing. The fact that you can disappear into the surface and reappear suddenly makes people nervous to begin with." She stopped weaving and looked back at him. "You seem to be having trouble understanding how our two villages relate." "You're right. I've only been here a year, and I see a lot of suspicion and resentment, and it doesn't make sense to me. You all have been neighbors for generations, yet no one wants to reach out or even learn about your people. I'd never heard the term Marrow. I honestly didn't know what to expect back there when you freed me from the net." "Did you think I would harm you? I'm glad to be an honorable example." "Well, me too," he interrupted himself. "Wait a minute. I was going to give you some stakes and jump rings to take back with you. I figure those are pretty useful. Only thing is, if you show up back in Celadon with such a bounty of stuff that is obviously not found, aren't you going to be accused of doing business with a human?" "But it is a gift." "I have a feeling there are just as many suspicious people on your side of the surface as on mine. These hatreds run deep, not to make a pun. I'll have to think of something that won't get you in trouble." The afternoon breeze blew them toward shore without needing to tack. Standing there, standing there just steering while she worked on the net gave him time to think. His underlying mistrust between the villages had been eating at him for months, ever since he was told he couldn't sell to them. Maybe meeting her was a chance to bridge this gap in some small way. He caught himself. Justice issues? Again?
He straightened up involuntarily with a twinge of pain across his back. "Are you all right?" she asked. "Yeah, just an unpleasant memory." "Hey, you're making great progress there." She held it up and showed only a couple cuts left. As the afternoon wind blew them past the palm tree-lined beaches of the harbor of Saint Rochelle by the sea, the piers and wharfs of the town came into view. The sky clouded up and the air became thick with humidity. Right on time, he thought. The seagulls that had been following them gave up and went ashore. As he watched her working, suspicion crept up on him that maybe she knew he was a blacksmith all along. What a coincidence that she was right there to save him, with the skills her people needed so badly. "We'll be there soon. Just finishing up." She held up the net to show him. "Very nice. You saved me a pretty penny and an embarrassing story. Thank you." She swung her tail up onto the deck and did something Sten did not expect. She walked aft toward him, or rather, she wriggled. She extended her set of long flippers from what should have been her thighs and bent her tail into a hump shape that placed the flat of her fluke against the deck. Then she scooted in a rolling motion between the flippers and her tail. She caught his amazed expression. "You can't tell me you've never seen a marrow walk." "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to stare. I didn't realize your tail is so flexible." She pulled up next to him and cocked her head playfully. "I can do all kinds of things." He cleared his throat and took a half step back. Flirting? She must have known he was a blacksmith. More frankly, she offered, "May I help with the rigging when we pull into the dock?" He looked around at all that needed to be done. Sure, my dock is on the inside of those piers, so I'm going to need to swing the sail around as we tack. Do you know what I mean by that?" She smiled and nodded. "Yes, I'm familiar with how sailing works." "You've sailed before?" "No, but I've watched humans sail all the time. I like to watch and learn whenever I can." Oh, maybe he was wrong to suspect her motives, or maybe she felt she needed to lie to get his confidence. In either case, this was a chance for him to do the right thing. "That's good that you like to learn, because I've decided that my gift to you will be to teach you something." Indeed, Giel's sailing skills were handy as they navigated around the piers and pulled up to Sten's berth. They both watched for anyone looking out of the bamboo and woven mat buildings on the piers that might see her, but there was no one. The barking seals of the piling crossbeams under the piers covered any sound that they made. Sten was taken by the smells of the harbor, the seaweed and the barnacles that clung under the pier pilings, the smell of cut fish. He never noticed these when he was home. Did it always smell like this? He guessed a few hours out on the open ocean had cleared his head. Giel sighed and smiled as they pulled up to the floating landing platform. He started to ask why, when he saw the ramp was what she was relieved to see. Everywhere else on the piers, there were only ladders to climb. She may be flexible, but a ladder would be a real challenge without 2 feet. She had no difficulty walking up the ramp to the wharf topside. She turned around at the top and pointed to the name of the prow on the boat. "Why is your boat called the Back 40? 40 what?" "Well, she belongs to a friend of mine who's a rancher and a farmer. He owns lots of land. We measure land in acres, which is a pretty big piece. I guess it's a joke among ranchers that you never get to tend your furthest acreage. Norn doesn't get to sail as often as he would like, so he named his boat after that back 40 acres of land." "Thank you. I never would have figured that out." So I'll stop there and come
Okay.
back. So hopefully that gives you a flavor for the setup of the story.
I think it does. Thank you so much for that reading. And here we go. So we do have some questions from folks out there in the audience. Yes, and I just want to say before we get to that to the asking of the questions, now is the time, you guys. Start putting your names into the comment section if you want to be entered to win a copy of this book. And I think you have a copy to show us.
I have.
All right.
This is what the
Let's
book
check
looks
it
like.
out.
If I can find the right camera spot. There it is. There it is. Great. There we go.
The cover,
There we go.
yeah, the cover art is
I
by
love
Lee
the
Moyer,
cover art.
who
It's
is
very
rather
pretty.
famous in science fiction circles. She's actually, as I described in the reading, she's actually dolphin colored. But he decided that there's a sequence where at one point they're dealing with a lava vent underneath the water. There's a volcanic vent. So the bright yellow behind her, and this is the lava vent, and the purple is her moving into shadow with one of Sten's knives. So that's Mermaid steel. So yeah, I love it. Love this cover.
Okay.
Great
I
cover.
like it. I think the cover is nice. And not the usual colors of,
Right.
aquatic blues and greens. So it really is quite outstanding, at least in my opinion. So yes. Okay. Question number 1. Let me go find it because we had a few of them, and let me see here. Okay. From Jack. Are there things you have ever edited out of a book that you wish you hadn't?
Okay. There are lots of things that almost end up in books and then get saved for later for other projects. My writing method is a little quirky, although I know a few writers who work this way. I tend to collect ideas. And so I will start with a basic premise. I'll have like a 3-page sketch outline of what I want to tell with the story. I'll start with big thematic things, whatever it is that inspired me to write it in the first place, right? And then I'll look at that 3 pages and realize, there's a lot of other ideas that fit in here. What about this? And maybe if I try that. And pretty soon the 3 pages is turned into 10 pages, and the 10 pages is turned into 20 pages. And every pass I make back through it is more decisions about what to put in and also then what to leave out. And so by the time I get to about 20 pages, I have an actual synopsis. It actually starts taking shape, things in sequence, start thinking about chapter breaks. I start thinking about story structure, the whole conflict pyramid of, getting your protagonist not getting what he wants until he can resolve the conflict of the story, right? All that starts to take shape by about 20 pages. And at some point after that, I start thinking, all right, I know what this story is. If I were to read this synopsis to a stranger, they would know maybe not everything that happens in the story, but they would know what I'm trying to say. They would know what the story's about, why this story is different than other stories, what the elevator pitch, as it were, right?
Yes.
You're familiar with that term, right?
I am.
So at that point, you're then have something written down that you can come back to, and it cooks more ideas. It's like putting the pot back on the fire, and more ideas start cooking. And then you can actually start writing the prose. You can always change your mind. It's just words on paper. That's something I actually teach a class on how to finish a book. People get stuck with being, with what they've written so far, and it's not working, and they're afraid to change it because they don't want to lose anything. It's all words on paper. If you don't forget why you got excited about the book in the first place, that's the key. Write that down. Write your back of the book blurb and write it down. Stick it on your desk. That's what got you excited. That's what'll get a reader excited. That's what'll get an editor or a publisher excited. That's your touchstone. So it isn't so much edit it out and then wanted to put back, because sometimes, you take something out and you wait a minute, wait, that really does fit. Maybe in a different place. Maybe it happens later in the story. I have a kind of a horrific story about how the trilogy got written. Let me just to share this with you. I spent way too much time writing and rewriting this one book, right? Because I had all these ideas, and the longer I stayed with it, the more research that I did, the bigger it got, until it got to be this massive tome. And I said, wait a minute, this is not appropriate for the genre. This is a thriller, right? Thriller is supposed to be wham, bam, slam, right?
Fast-paced,
gunfights and plane crashes and intrigue, right? But this thing was monstrous. And I took it to some professional editors, and I paid good money for these people to tell me that it was great stuff, and they had no idea what was wrong with the book. It's like, thanks, guys, right? And so I put it down, and I went off, and I went off and I wrote Mermaid Steel, in the meantime. And I read a bunch of other things. I came back to it and I realized that I'd written 2 books that were all interleafed together. And what I really needed to do was pull them apart and have one happen first and then the other one happen second. I'd written a book and its sequel at the same time. And that really got me thinking about the story structure. And that's when I could then go ahead and write the 3rd book and finish the trilogy. Because it wasn't until I realized, these things are happening, in fact, every 4 years. The first book takes place in 2001, the second book takes place in 2005, and the 3rd book takes place in 2009. And once I decided 1st, 2nd, 3rd, then it was a much easier story to tell. So all that stuff that came out of book 1 became book 2. Hope that answers your question. It's it was a hard lesson.
But also though, how cool that you had, I mean, you basically had written those 2 books, like
Yes.
2 whole books, and it was just sort of all there together, and sometimes just getting it out is the hard part, and you did all of that. And so then it was just a matter of going back and organizing all the things, right?
Yeah, it was like showing up at a playground that was chock full of toys and realizing which ones belonged where on the playground. So the editing process took a couple of years to get it all hammered out, but it was an editing process. I had all this raw material already there. It was amazing.
So we have this question. I like this one. Did you put research into aquatic biology to fuel the details of your story?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I am a firm believer that you write what you know, and if you don't know it, then go do your homework. I am all about the research. Spent 20 years researching the religions that drive the urban fantasy trilogy. I spent a good 5 years making sure that I had all my facts right about how coral grows and how hard you hit the water if you fall into it from a certain height, and how long you can hold your breath. And there was a lot went into it. And in the anatomy of the merfolk, the Merrow, they're part dolphin, part human. They're cetacean, so they are mammals. But among the many cultural differences that they have to overcome, our 2 lovers also have to deal with the anatomical differences.
So where did you get the word Merrow?
Because it's a romance, and so I have to go there with the lights on. Yes, there are anatomical problems. They do not quite work out as easily as they thought they would.
One might imagine. Where did you find the word Merrow? Did you find that in folklore somewhere?
Yes, it's an Irish term. That's an old Irish term for mermaids. Yes.
Oh, okay.
And it just connected with me. The story is actually set on the equivalent of the west coast, the Portuguese Goa coast of India, in about 1700. If you're looking for a historical touch point, because that's the point where the Portuguese came in and took over everything with their guns, and pretty much just turned it into their own. Not that there were mermaids in India. I wish there had been, but no.
No, I'm pretty sure every culture has their own version of such things, and India has some pretty interesting stuff going on with flying carpets and all kinds of crazy weaponry in their ancient weaponry in their religious materials. So
yeah, you're right. I'm sure that I did not actually research Indian mermaids. The very first appearance of mermaids goes all the way back to ancient Persia, though. So there were mermaids in mythologies going back 2000 BC. It's an old concept.
It makes you wonder. Let's see. So we have does one of the main characters hold a special place in your heart, and if so, why?
Yes, the 2 lovers actually really do. Since I'm not a formula romance writer, I did not attempt to copy the standard Harlequin formula. I didn't think I'd be selling it to a Harlequin audience anyway. I'm hoping to sell it to a fantasy audience who are a little more flexible, a little more allowing in my breaking the formula. And so the story is told as much from his point of view as from hers, which is not usually the case in romances. I wanted to stick that in there too. And so, yeah, I absolutely adore these characters. I would love to have them as friends. They are both very wholesome, very decent people faced with a ridiculous, unfair situation. And like I say, I myself have been in Sten's shoes many times in my life where I thought, all right, well, I've got my white privilege. I'm just going to come here and fix this, and only made it worse. So, yeah, I totally identify with his plight. And on the other hand, she's adorable. And I hope the readers think she's adorable too. But she's a troublemaker. She does her work fast. She gets bored. She breaks molds. She talks about how she can't hold a man in her life because she's such a troublemaker and she's so outspoken, and that's just not the way of her people.
But very polite about everything, I thought, from the little window that we had there.
Yeah, well, she walks up to that window very cautiously because she knows full well he's a blacksmith, and she's got all kinds of agenda, and she's trying to be coy and trying to be circumspect, and he sees through it. But yeah, she's actually a bit of a hellraiser. So
just starts off seeming so innocent.
Yeah, that breaks down. In the very next chapter, you see her talking to her brother, who's like, "So does he know you're stalking him?"
So we have one last question, and then we will do the drawing. So get your names into the comments, you guys. Okay. And here's our last question: is what other authors inspire you the most?
I have great respect for Michael Crichton,
okay,
who wrote a lot of science fiction and thrillers. His politics sort of went south toward the end there, but he was a huge inspiration to me. His writing style, the bold, oh yeah, well, throw the kitchen sink in there and go for it sort of attitude. A friend of mine who is actually a magazine critic, I befriended him over the years as he's reviewed my stuff. He refers to my approach as the mad scientist bravery of just going ahead and trying anything and see if it'll work. So that's.
Well, you can always delete if it doesn't. So
well, you can always have a flop too. I mean, but people have generally appreciated that I don't stick to boundaries. I'll try something new anytime.
Well, that is a oh no, I hit the wrong button. I was going to say that is a unique thing about you. Oftentimes people get in their groove of their style and they don't get out of it. So it means you probably have a variety of content for your readers to choose from too.
That's what I hope. Well, not to go over the hour. I see we're about to run out of time.
Oh, but, it's okay. It's not gonna magically cut off or something.
Okay.
Okay, we have a couple extra minutes.
I actually have a lot of different influences. 2 years ago, I wrote and produced my own musical.
What?
So yeah,
it's many talents.
I'm kind of polymath that way. I wrote the sequel to Snow White as a musical. It's called The Mirror's Revenge. You can find stuff out on the internet for it. It played here in the Bay Area for 3 weeks. The rave reviews, people loved it. I'm trying to find another theater to produce it, but of course, theaters are shut down right now because of COVID. But,
where do we find this amazing piece of work?
There was an album of the songs that we produced. You can get that from Flowing Glass Music. It's it's the mirror.
Glass music.
Flowing Glass, yeah, Flowing Glass.
Lass like L like
L-A-S-S. Yes, like Lassie. Yes, Flowing Glass.
Flowing Glass music.
Yes.
I'm just gonna write that down here actually for Flowing Glass music.
You can look them up. It's The Mirror's Revenge. Yeah, I should have sent you the link. Sorry.
Oh, it's okay. Mirror's Revenge, and that is a musical. Mirror's Revenge musical. Yeah. Wow. So do you have a background in writing music? I mean, that's not
Again, it was a story that needed to be told. I worked on this one for about 10 years. I was originally inspired by an Evanescence song. You may remember decades ago they had a big hit with a song called Bring Me to Life. And I saw them perform live, and they're fantastic live. If you ever have a chance to see Evanescence live, I highly endorse that. And I was listening to this song, and it just sort of struck me that she was singing about Snow White. And I was like, okay, there we are. So again, you hang on to your original inspiration and you take it for everywhere that it will take you. And 10 years later, I had a musical on stage.
That is crazy and awesome. So I'm getting it set up here for us to do the draw. That is just amazing. Like you're so talented.
Yeah, and the next novel I'm working on is a Lovecraftian horror novel. So yeah, I bounce around a lot. I never do the same thing twice.
Well, I love Lovecraft. Maybe when you're done with that, you'll have to come back on the show and give us a sampling of that.
Sure, happy to.
Let's see here. Random name picker. This is our Wheel of Win, and I have to take you off the Wheel of Win because you are not going to enter your own. Let's see. Wheel of Win, and
absolutely.
Let's see. I saw Gunther out there. And this one. Okay, there we go. These are people. Are there any last names, entrants that I see? You guys down there? No. I think, Gunther, you are the last person to have put your name in.
Excellent.
Yes, along with all of our Patreon patrons. And let's go ahead and submit the names and
very nice.
Spin the wheel. Yes. This is always my favorite part.
Excellent crafted. Nice.
Emily Boyer, congratulations. You are the winner of today's book giveaway from Mermaid Steel.
Yes, these are coming. I'm supposed to get them in about 2 weeks. I will sign one and send it to Emily. Absolutely.
All right, that sounds awesome. And so I just want to, we are now actually right on the dot for our time to, I'm so sorry. I didn't see that in time, Gunther. It didn't come through for Becca. Next time, Becca, we'll get you onto the wheel, whether or not you are here in the audience. I'll remember your name. I'll put it down. That way you'll be in. I'm sorry, I didn't see that. So I wanted to say before we go, we're on Friday. So that means Sunday is Handmade Home Shopping. And that is at 4 to 5 p.m. I hope to see you guys out there for that. And then, of course, that takes us into next week. And I just to get it out there, though, because we do have to kind of do this leading into December. As of today, I have officially set up our link, which is not going on the ticker, but it will be in the low bar and I'm gonna, let me find it here and put it up for you guys, for our holiday cards. As you probably know, if you have even been here for half a second, every single year I love to send out postcards to people. They are 100% free, one per household, please. But all you have to do is just go to that little tiny URL link right there for YULE 2020, pick your card, and then come December, those will be mailed out to you. So it's always fun to get something festive in the mail. It's way better than all of the bills and the junk mail and all the newspaper stuff and the coupons and the advertisements. So so some fun stuff. And I got that finally up officially so we can start collecting the names. We have a choice between 2 cards. So guys, if you want that, please feel free to avail yourself. I love doing it. And with that said, Jay, I'm just going to say, should anybody want to buy your books, all of your links are in the low bar as well. And of course, they've been going in the ticker and whatnot throughout the course of the show. People can come back to it at any time. The show stays up, and all you have to do is expand the descriptor, and you can find links to Jay's work. Should you purchase something from Jay, please leave a review. The reviews help indie authors so much. So That is always the little last thing I like to say. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we bid you adieu?
No, thank you so much for having me on. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for being here. And we will see you guys hopefully day after tomorrow for Handmade Home Shopping. Bye-bye, folks.
Thank you.